Good morning, fourth graders. Today we're talking about line plots with fractional units. We're going to combine two things, beetles, and we're going to also line plots. Now I personally find that line plots are disgusting, whereas I think that beetles are okay. So let's get started here with a line plot that's all about measuring beetles. Okay, here's our first slide here with our 3-inch ruler, which is big enough for measuring most beetles. The first beetle here is, how long would you say that beetle is? It's a mixed number. I'd like you to think about it and let's see if you're right. That beetle is to this point on the ruler, which would mean it's 1.5 inches long. So after measuring 1.5 inches long, we would go here to the place on our number line that says that's 1.5 inches, and we would put our first X. Let's measure our next beetle. It looks like that one's about 1 inch. So we're going to go to the 1 inch mark on the thing, and we're going to put an X. Then we're going to measure the next beetle. It looks like it's 1 3/4 of an inch. I can see that as 1 and then 1, 2, 3/4 of an inch. On the line plot, we would find 1 3/4, and we would add an X to show that that beetle is 1 inch. This beetle looks like it's 1 inch long, and we would go to the line plot, find 1 inch, and add an X. Since there's already an X there, we'd have to add a second X on top of it. Next beetle we have here is about 1. We have the same issue. We're going to have to go to 1 inches, and we're going to have to add a third X to show that we have 1, 2, 3 beetles that are all exactly 1 inch long. Remember, we have one beetle that's 1.5 inches long and one that's 1 3/4 inch long. This beetle's a little bit tiny and it's kind of cute, don't you think? Anyways, it's 3/4 of an inch. So we're going to find the 3/4 of an inch mark right here and add 1X to show that beetle. So now we have our line plot representing our beetles. We should be able to tell how many inches that those are because we can count each of the X's on the line plot. We can tell how many beetles there are by just counting the X's on the line plot. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 beetles. If we hadn't seen them all measured, we'd still be able to use the line plot to figure out that there were 6 beetles measured. Now we're going to look at if we had to turn a tally chart into a line plot. First we'd start with our line plot here. Then we'd look at the first measurement and how many beetles there were for that measurement. There's only 1. We'd find the 3/4 inch, which is the measurement, and put an X. Next we would look at the 1 inch measurement, and we see there's 3, so we would have to put 3 X's at 1. And here we have 1, 2, 3 X's. We wouldn't do anything for 1 1/4 inch because there's nothing there, but for 1.5 inch we'd find the 1.5 inch mark. And we would put 1X at 1.5 inches. Finally, for the last one, we would take 1 3/4 inch and we'd find 1 mark, and we would put it at 1 3/4 inches. Our line plot tells us several things. It tells us that there's 6 beetles measured. It tells us that the shortest beetle was 3/4 of an inch, and the longest beetle was 1 3/4 of an inch. If you were asked how much bigger or longer was the longest beetle on this line plot with the shortest beetle on this line plot, we would have to look at it to find the answer. First, we'd have to find the biggest beetle, which is 1 3/4 of an inch, and then we would have to subtract the smallest beetle, which is 3/4 of an inch. So the answer that we would get is 1 3/4 minus 3/4 would equal 1 inch. I hope you somewhat enjoyed that quick overview of line plots using fractions of a unit.